Good morning. So thank you for joining us today for our webinar, What's for Lunch with Perform, hosted by Karine Solomon, a McGill Dietetics graduate student who is with us doing her internship at Perform Center at Concordia University. Thanks so much for joining us today as Karine prepares a recipe, a Karine lentil salad bowl. Thanks, Karine, and welcome.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for inviting me to Concordia's Perform What's for Lunch series, and welcome to my kitchen. So today for lunch we're going to be having a Korean style lentil bowl from lentils.org. So just to briefly go over today's plan, first we're going to be cooking. I'm going to share with you the recipe, the concept of a balanced plate, and as well I'm going to share with you the nutrition information of this dish. Then I'm going to share with you some meal prepping tips to make planning for the week easier. And lastly, I'm going to go over some food safety tips, specifically for leftovers. So this will include storage and reheating. So as mentioned, I've taken the Korean style lentil bowl from lentils.org. So you can see the original recipe on the left. This recipe makes 2 portions. So if you're just cooking for one, you'll be able to save the rest as leftover. I've made a few adaptations to this dish just to consider cost and taste. So just to look at those adaptations, So the original recipe called for 2 cups of cooked green lentils, but now I'm going to replace this with 1 cup, and instead I'm going to be adding a cooked grain. So today I'll be using quinoa, but feel free to use any other type of cooked grain that you like, such as millet or rice. The next change which I've made is the gochujang or miso paste, which I've replaced with sriracha sauce. Gochujang or miso paste are very savory sauces. However, it may be hard to find in most stores. So I've replaced this with sriracha sauce, so it'll be more easily accessible. And if you don't find sriracha sauce, you can use any other type of sauce which you like, hot sauce which you like. And in order to make up for the savoriness of the dish, I'm going to be adding a soy sauce mix, as you can see on the right. And lastly, the original recipe called for soft-boiled eggs. I decided to fry these instead, just because soft-boiled eggs can be a bit tricky to make. And the traditional way of making a Korean bowl is to fry them, so that's what I'll be doing. And just to note some allergens for this dish, we have sesame, egg, and wheat. So I've done a couple of steps to pre-prepare for today. So first, I've made a 1 cup of green lentils. So you can do this by taking 1/3 of a cup of lentils. So you're going to want to sort through your lentils and rinse them just to make sure that there are no tiny rocks. And you're going to add around a cup of water. You're going to bring this to a boil and then simmer this for 15 to 20 minutes. So what you're hoping to have is very tender lentils, and but that they still have their shape intact. If you want to save a dish or just some time, you can use canned lentils. I do recommend rinsing these just to lower the sodium content. And then the next thing which I made is 1 cup of quinoa. So I took 2/3 of a cup of water and I brought this to a boil. And then I added my 1/3 cup of quinoa and I simmered this for 12 to 15 minutes with the lid on. After I took it off the stove and I kept the lid on for another 5 minutes, so this will help to make your quinoa a bit more fluffy. Or, as I mentioned before, you can use any other type of cooked grain that you like. So to make my soy sauce mix, I took 1 teaspoon of rice vinegar, sesame oil, and low sodium soy sauce. If you don't have low sodium soy sauce, that's okay. What you can do is take the regular soy sauce, take 1/2 teaspoon of that, and dilute it with 1/2 teaspoon of water, and that will help to lower the sodium content. So while my quinoa and my lentils were cooking, I took this as a chance to prepare my vegetables. So I've sliced 1 cup of mushrooms, 1/2 cup of red bell pepper. I've cut my carrots into matchsticks, so I took 1/2 cup of that. And then I've diced 1/2 cup of green onions. So just a little tip for you guys, if a recipe is using a measuring cup for the ingredients, and a way to not take out the measuring cup every time you make a recipe is just to take note of how much you're using of each ingredient. So for this, I noted around 4 to 5 medium mushrooms, half a pepper, 2 medium carrots, and around 2 onion stalks. So this is a nice little video from Martha Stewart just to show you guys how to cut your carrots into matchsticks or julienne. I just find this is a great way to learn how to, learn a new technique such as cutting julienne. So now we have all of our ingredients ready. So what I'm going to do is change the views to my stove just so that you can see what I'm doing a bit better. So just give us a couple of moments. So here we have our lentils and quinoa. I've mixed these together. I have my stove on medium heat, and I'm just going to add a 1/4 cup of water. And I'm going to add my 1 tablespoon of sriracha sauce. And I'm going to mix this together. And I'm going to leave this on the stove until all the water has been absorbed. Just a little neat fact about lentils, unlike most other beans, lentils don't need to be pre-soaked ahead of time in order to cook them. But if you want to reduce some gas-producing carbs, you can soak them for 4 hours or for overnight. So now that's all mixed up. Here I have my small pan. I've added my vegetable oil and I put it on medium heat. So I'm going to be adding every vegetable one at a time with 1/3 of the soy sauce mix, and then I'm going to set that vegetable aside. So here I have my mushrooms. So I'm going to saute this for just a couple of minutes until it becomes softened and it becomes brown a bit. So I'm using white mushrooms, but you can use shiitake mushrooms as well. And just a neat little fact about mushrooms, sometimes they're referred to as forest meat, just because they have more protein than any other type of vegetable, although a mushroom is a fungus, not a vegetable. But compared to other ones, it does have more protein. So we can see it's getting a bit darker. So it's nearly ready. So here I have my soy sauce mix. So I'm going to be adding 1/3 of this. And you can hear that sizzle when the soy sauce hits the pan. So it's most likely because of the water content in the soy sauce mix hitting the heat of the pan. So you get that nice sizzle. So I'm just going to set this aside. So next is we have our red bell pepper. So we're going to saute this for 2 minutes as well. We just want it to get softened. And actually the red bell pepper is going to add a bit of a sweetened taste to the dish, so it's really nice. If you don't like peppers, you don't have to use these vegetables exactly. You can swap these vegetables for any other type of vegetable that either you have on hand or that you prefer. Anything that will saute well, such as broccoli or zucchini. So this recipe is very adaptable and flexible, so you can tweak it to your preferences. So I'm going to add a bit more of the soy sauce mix. And I'm going to put this one aside as well. And lastly, we have our carrots. So this will only require about a minute or so for sauteing. What I like about this dish is that every vegetable here is going to be adding its color, and we're going to have a very colorful dish at the end. But just so you know that carrots can come in all different sorts of colors. You know, it just doesn't come in orange. You can find it in purple, red, white, and yellow. So you can get a variety there as well. I'm just going to add my last carrot. So when we're stir frying, we continually want to stir the dish up just to make sure that the heat is being evenly distributed on all sides of your vegetable. So this is about time. I'm going to set this one aside as well. So moving on to my counter. So here I have a bowl that I'm going to be having for lunch, and this is the bowl that I'm going to be having for leftovers. So I'm going to split evenly everything that I've made for today. So today I used fresh ingredients. I made everything from scratch, but if you're ever in a tight crunch, you can use anything for leftovers in this dish. So for example, if you previously made a stir fry and you've had rice left over, then put that in this dish. Or even if you have a vegetable already made, you can add that to this dish as well. So that's a great way to use your leftovers. So what we're going to do now is add each vegetable in equal piles around the bowl. So we have our carrots, and our red bell pepper, our mushrooms, and our green onions. So our dish is nearly complete. So what we're going to do is go back to the stove, and I'm going to be frying my egg. So I'm just going to add a bit more vegetable oil, just so that the egg doesn't stick on the pan. I'm just going to coat it. So I've pre-cracked my egg. So you can have your eggs any way that you like it. I just decided to fry it. Just for me, it's a personal preference for taste. But you can have your eggs soft boiled, hard boiled, or scrambled, really any way that you like it. So what we want is the whites to cook properly. So we're going to do that for about a couple minutes. And then we want the egg yolk to cook properly as well. You should never be eating a raw egg unless it's pasteurized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my eggs a little easy. So I'm going to eventually flip over my egg so that the egg yolk cooks properly. Just another way to make sure that the egg yolk cooks properly. What you can do is put a lid onto the pan, and the steam will help to cook the yolk. You can leave that for about a minute or so. So for now, I'm just going to be making one. just to show you guys the presentation of the final dish. So there you have it, our Korean style lentil bowl. So right now we're going to switch screens again, so it's just going to take a couple of moments just to go back, but thank you. Okay, so now that we've put it all together, we're ready to eat. So I just want to go over the balanced plate. So last year, Health Canada came out with a revised food guide. So we have a new Canada's food guide as of last year. And what you may remember the old one, which had the rainbow with the 4 different food groups, but now they're really promoting the concept of a balanced plate. And they recommend this for your meals and your snacks. So how can we eat in a balanced way? So what they do recommend is that half your plate can be fruits and vegetables. So here on the left side, we can see we have many colors. We have orange coming from carrots, green from broccoli, we have spinach, lettuce, tomatoes, blueberries, and strawberries. So a lot of different fruits and vegetables here. Not to say that you need all of these on your plate at the same time, but it's just good to aim for a variety. Then a quarter of your plate can be from protein foods. So this can include eggs, tofu, lentils, beans, nuts and seeds, meat and poultry. And then a quarter of your plate can come from whole grain foods. So this can be quinoa, wild rice, whole grain, whole wheat, pasta, and bread. And then of course we want to stay hydrated during the day. So we want to make water as our drink of choice. So how does our dish compare to the balanced plate? So I've mapped this out for you guys. So we can see half of our plate is coming from different types of vegetables here. We have a quarter and a bit more coming from protein foods, so our lentils and our egg. And then a quarter of our plate coming from a whole grain food such as quinoa. So why should we aim for a balanced plate? So as you can see, every component of this dish is adding its own mix of nutrients. So we have vitamins and minerals coming from each portion. And then also by having a variety of vegetables, we get even more of a mix of vitamins and minerals. So for example, the carrots and the red bell pepper are giving us vitamin A, which is important for our vision health. Vitamin K from the green onions is important because we use vitamin K to stop bleeding when we get a cut. The lentils and the egg are giving us vitamin B12, so this is important for our nerve cells. And the quinoa is giving us vitamin B6, which is important for brain and body metabolism. As well, we're getting a lot of protein from the lentils, egg, and quinoa, and this is important for building and repairing tissues. And then each component of this dish is giving us fiber, which is important for our gut health. So you can see that every component of this dish is contributing to our overall nutrition. So I've inputted all of the ingredients into a nutrient analysis database, and so from there I was able to get the nutrition information of this dish. In order to present it to you guys, I've made a nutrition facts table. And we often look at the percent daily value as a way to guide us. So a percent daily value is the percentage that a nutrient is contributing to a diet of 2,000 calories. But sometimes it's often difficult to interpret what these percentages mean. So just to give you guys a quick tip on how to look at these percentages is the 5-15% rule. So if it's 5% or less, it's contributing a little. If it's 15% or more, it's contributing a lot. And between 5 and 15%, it's moderate amount. So things that we want to limit are saturated and trans fats, sodium, and added sugars. So this dish is providing us with a moderate amount of saturated fats and sodium, and it's giving us no trans fats, and we also have no added sugars. This dish is providing us with 10 grams of fiber, which is more than a third of what we need per day, so it's giving us a good amount of fiber. We have 23 grams of protein, which is considered complete for a meal. And then this dish is also high in potassium, iron, and folate. I was interested in the cost of this meal. So per portion, it's $2.81. When you compare this to what you would get at a restaurant, these types of bowls generally go from $10 to $13. So for example, at Mandy's, most of their bowls are $10.50. So you do save quite a bit of money from cooking at home. So I want to share with you guys some meal prepping tips just to make planning for the week easier. So we've often heard of meal prep or meal prep Sundays. So this is when you dedicate a time in the week to batch cook a bunch of recipes, store them, and put them in containers in your fridge. And the reason that people do this or we do this is just to reduce the amount of time that you're cooking during the week. So you don't have to restart a whole cooking process every night of the week, and that you don't get tired of trying to think of ideas of what to cook if you're really strapped for time. So in order to meal prep or to become good at planning in general, I have some tips for you. So my first tip is to plan your grocery ahead. So when you do this, when you head to the grocery store, you know exactly what you need to get. And also you can see what's on sale ahead of time. So you can use an app like Flip that will show you flyers in your area. And then also that can help build your grocery list. SOScuisine.com is a website that will allow you to see flyers in your area as well, but it is a paid subscription, but it does a bit more than that. It allows you to customize weekly meals. But they do let you see the recipes online for free, so if you want to check them out. And I really recommend to use seasonal produce, just because these fruits and vegetables tend to be cheaper when bought in season. So at the end of my slide set, I do have a resource for you so that you can see what is seasonal in Quebec. My second tip is to choose simple recipes. So this is good for two reasons. The first is, obviously these recipes are less elaborate, so they'll be easier and quicker to make. And the second reason is that these recipes are less likely to rely on the types of things that you're putting in it. It more likely relies on the cooking method. So if we look at my Korean style lentil bowl, you can swap out the different vegetables, you can add a different protein food or even a different type of grain. So it makes these kinds of recipes super flexible to your preferences and taste. If you're looking for some healthy meal ideas, I have a few websites that I do recommend. So we have lentils.org, which is of course a site that uses lentils in most of their recipes, which is a great plant-based protein. We have cookspiration.com. This is a site created by Dietitians of Canada, and a nice little thing about this site is that they share their nutrient analysis of all their recipes, so that's available to you. And then we have Mealline. So this is both an app and a website. And from here, I like this for a few reasons. The first is that you can find recipes that will take 30 minutes or less to make. You can find recipes and filter them based on your diet restriction, and then you can also customize your weekly meals. So you have a lot of resources out there if you're looking for healthy recipes. My third tip for you is to choose options you can freeze. So this can include soups, stews, curries, and muffins, and much more. So this is great. You can batch cook a recipe and then store it in the freezer, and then reheat it on a day where you feel like you're strapped for time. And so that's a great way to save time when you feel like you don't have time to make a complete meal. I do recommend using freezer-safe containers, so anything with a good seal. If you're using glass, make sure it doesn't easily break. Even Ziploc bags are good because it has a nice seal. And then my fourth tip is to focus on food groups for balanced meals. So you want to make sure that you have a vegetable, whole grain, and protein in stock, and then from there you can easily throw together a balanced meal. My fifth tip is to maximize your time. So try to prepare recipes with similar ingredients or cooking methods together. So when you do this, for example, you have a recipe telling you to roast one vegetable, another recipe telling you to roast another, you can easily throw them in the same pan and put them in the oven together instead of having to coordinate different recipes requiring different types of tasks. And my last tip is to have fun, explore new recipes, and experiment. When you learn to have fun in the kitchen, it makes the process way easier. So put on some music in the kitchen or cook with a friend, and it'll make the process more enjoyable. And I find that when I cook a recipe, a couple of times, I learn to get better at it. So by being comfortable in the kitchen, it will make meal prepping way easier. So we've made all this food, and now we'd like to store it. So I'd like to go over some food safety tips. So my first tip is to make sure that your fridge and freezer are set to the correct temperature. So your refrigerator should be at 4 degrees or lower, and your freezer at -18 degrees or lower. This is because we wanted to get it out of that temperature danger zone between 4 and 60 degrees. This is when bacteria grows most efficiently. So when we store it in the refrigerator and freezer at the correct temperature, then we can preserve our food for longer. Now, when you put it in the fridge, it's good to know how long your leftovers will last. So most leftovers are good for 3 to 4 days, and soups is good for 2 to 3 days. And just a quick note for you guys, it's best to store them in shallow containers, just so that the cooling can happen a bit faster and we can get it out of that temperature danger zone. And it's good to make sure that there's no steam left in your container before putting it in the fridge, just to eliminate some condensation. And so we've made all this food, we stored it in the fridge, now we want to eat it. So here are some tips for food safety tips for reheating. First is to thaw your frozen leftovers in the fridge or microwave. This is opposed to putting it at room temperature on the counter, just to get it out of that temperature danger zone. When you're reheating your food, it should have a safe internal temperature of 74 degrees. So you can use a digital thermometer. If you don't have one, the point is that your food should be boiling hot. You don't want it to be lukewarm. And then also, you should portion what you'll eat, since foods should only be reheated once. So if you have a big pot of soup, just portion what you'll be eating, because anything left over at this point could either be thrown away or composted. So this is because foods can only last for a maximum amount of time in the temperature danger zone once you've started to cook it, so around 2 to 4 hours. So another cycle of cooling it and then reheating it is most likely to get it over this time. So I just have some questions for you guys. You're going to see a poll come out. So my first question is, which picture best represents the balanced plate? So I'll give you guys about 20 seconds or so to give a response. Okay. So we can see that most people answered B, and that is the correct answer. So we see that the first plate and the second plate, the third plate are not very balanced. Either they're missing a whole grain or a protein food, or it's just all vegetables. We kind of want to aim for a balance of all three components on your dish. My second question is, you place the thermometer in your refrigerator and find out that the temperature is 6.5 degrees. This is acceptable, true, or false? So all of you guys got false, and that is correct. So we should expect to find that our refrigerator is at 4 degrees or lower. And my last question for you guys is, to what temperature should food be reheated? A, 68 degrees, B, 72 degrees, or C, 74 degrees? So most of you have guessed C, 74 degrees. So that is the correct answer. Yeah, so when we reheat our foods, it should be at 74 degrees. So thank you so much for joining my presentation today. I hope you were able to learn something new. I do have a couple of resources for you that I've used throughout my presentation. I've added a couple more just if you want to read more about certain topics, such as meal prepping tips from Sharon Palmer, who's a registered dietitian, and Health Canada's advice for food safety regarding storage, leftovers, and microwaving tips. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karine. That was wonderful, and it looks delicious. We have a few questions. So firstly, we have a question about when you're cooking or sauteing the vegetables, would it be okay to put the vegetables all in one pan? Like if you're not as concerned about the presentation, or is that all, it's still okay to do both ways, right? Or,
Of course, if you want to just save some time, instead of portioning out your vegetables, feel free to throw them in all at the same time. It makes no difference to the quality of the dish at the end.
wonderful. And then a second question, what do you suggest replacing the egg with to keep the protein content of the dish the same, but if you're eating a more plant-based or diet?
Yeah, you can use other types of beans. You can use tofu, anything that you feel will saute well. So I think tofu would saute well in this dish and enhance it.
Okay, thanks so much. And then a last question, a little bit different from the topic of the webinar, but the question is if you have heard about drinking water a half hour before eating, and is this a real recommendation? Is it something everybody should do, or what are your thoughts on that?
So it may help to regulate your appetite if you want to drink some water beforehand. You'll feel a bit more full before you start eating, so it may help with your portion sizes. But it's also important to drink when you feel thirsty. So just try to keep hydrated during the day as well is an important point.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much. I think that's all the questions. We have some comments saying that it looks very yummy, and thanks so much. It's a very informative webinar, and I can't wait to make the recipe. And I don't believe we have any more comments in the chat. So thanks so much for preparing this for us, and thank you to each of our participants today for joining us, and we look forward to being able to host some similar sessions in the future. So thanks so much, Karine, and have a great day, everybody.